Hi there, I'm Jaden. I'm from CompassWave. We make tools that help you to capture leads on your website, give those leads instant estimates, give them invoices, schedule their appointments, charge their credit cards even. I'll get into a little bit more about that later. I'm excited to tell you about it. But in the meantime, I'd like to tell you a little bit about your online presence. Now, this is a nerdy topic, so I'll limit the jargon, I promise. But I also promise that if you follow these few tips that I give you, your business is going to grow a lot. And it's going to give you a path to improve even further. This talk is pre-recorded, so if there's a little chat bar on the side, I'll be in there talking. Or if you have any questions, you can also hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Jaden Guitarman. You can DM me or tag me in a post, and I'll try and get to all of the questions. But the thing we really want to talk about today is your online presence big enough? And that's a tough question because it really doesn't have an answer. There's no number where we can say, okay, well, you need this amount of reach. There's no quantity where you can stop at. The answer is almost always no, because we can always improve. In fact, I'd like to show you a couple numbers on this. In terms of e-commerce, at least, almost 30% of all business is conducted online nowadays. Now, that's a lot. Now, remember, this is all business, so it's including a lot of things that have to be done in person. So for there to be 30% of all business being done online, that is a massive amount. And it's a lot more in the cleaning industry especially. 81% of all businesses saw growth after going online. Again, this is all businesses, not specific to the cleaning industry, but it's even higher in this industry. Online influence is essential nowadays. So what's the point of having an online presence other than it just being important from these statistics? Well, there are 3 goals that we can have with our online presence, and I'll show you how to attack each one of them. First of all, grow your business. That's the big one. You want your business to expand. You want it to have a better reputation. You want to reach more people. That's step number 1. That's goal number 1. Goal number 2, make money. Obviously, that's what businesses are for, right? In the end, we're trying to increase profits. Number 3 is customer outreach. Now, I'll get into this a little bit later, but your customers, they need to be communicated with a lot more than you might think. I'll get to that in the end, but it does come into play a lot more than you think. So step 1, get a website. And this is the bare minimum. Actually, a lot of businesses were fine, and perhaps businesses that have been around for years, maybe they're good. Maybe they're all right with what they have. But nowadays, in the modern market, no business can reasonably survive without a website. For example, just in your head, think of a business that you know that doesn't have a website. Now, many of us can't even think of one. If you can, and I'm probably talking to a small sliver of the audience here, if you can, how did you hear about that business? Is that method sustainable for that business's growth? For example, we have a pizzeria around here that doesn't have a website. And I only knew about the pizzeria because I went to the computer shop next door and saw, hey, there's a pizzeria here. That's not a sustainable method because you're, limiting your audience to only the people that go next door. That's not a sustainable method of getting new customers, right? That pizzeria would be far better off if it was in the top rankings of Google, for example, and I Googled pizzerias near me. In fact, I did Google pizzerias near me, and now I go to one of their competitors more often. Think about that business that you were thinking about that doesn't have a website. If you found a better competitor online, would you replace your patronage at the first business with the second? I did. Honestly, that's just the way the world works nowadays, and so website is becoming increasingly essential. So the key thing, though, about your website is not what information it presents necessarily. That plays into it. But just having a website in itself doesn't boost your business. It's not like a little page that just says something about your business and then you move on. It's supposed to get you business. It's supposed to bring in people. And so reach is key. You have to reach as many people as possible, especially targeted audiences. And we'll get into that a little bit. There are a lot of other pieces of information out there about targeted advertising. I won't dive into that a whole lot. But it becomes very important to make sure that you are talking to the right people and as many of them as possible. What is on the website matters, but it's how many people see it that are the main factors. And the biggest thing that plays into it is a little piece of jargon you'll hear a lot nowadays, SEO. It stands for Search Engine Optimization. Basically, it's lingo for getting higher on Google. Now, I Googled cleaning near me, and on the right you can see the 2 cleaning services that came up first for me in York, Pennsylvania. And then below it you see a top 10 list. So that's great. These 2 services have managed to make it to the top of Google when I Google cleaning near me. And that's great for them, because the phrase just cleaning near me, as you can see by the Google statistics on the left, by that line graph there, the popularity of that Google search has almost doubled in the last year. Google is the primary way that people find new businesses nowadays. And so these 2 cleaning services at the top of the Google list for York, Pennsylvania, they're getting a lot of business coming in from Google. That's business that their competitors are missing out on because they're not as high up on Google. Now, the good thing about this is that while Google is the primary way that people find new businesses nowadays, their algorithm is not just a black box, as we like to say in the computer science world. It's not a hidden thing that you can't ever touch. They don't release specific details, but you do actually have a significant amount of control over your place in Google. They actually give you a tool to measure how well you are doing and how much you can improve. This is called Google Lighthouse. Now, this is the Google Lighthouse statistics for the 2 cleaning services that were at the top of the Google list. You see the one at the left, it ranks them on performance, accessibility, best practices, and SEO. Now, all of these are very important, especially for keeping customers, but SEO is the one we're concerned with right now. Now, sometimes there's nothing you can do about performance and best practices. I'll be honest with you there. A lot of the websites I've made rank pretty low on performance and best practices just because of third parties that you can't really do much about. However, the ones that you can always help are accessibility and SEO. Those are very important. Accessibility is referring to people who have, for example, maybe they're colorblind and they can't see the color difference between a button or something like that. That makes up a surprisingly large amount of your audience, so you want to make sure your site is catering to those people. SEO, though, is the one we're most concerned with here, and they both should be above 95, ideally. Now, these 2 cleaning services, they have an 86 and an 84, respectively, but those are the highest in our area. All of the other cleaning services have below an 84 in SEO, and so they're going to show up lower on Google. But if they could just bump up their SEO score a little bit, which Google Lighthouse gives them tips on how to do, that would put them clear above their competitors. And you can do the same. This part might take a developer. If you're not familiar with techie stuff, that's fine. I'm sure there's a lot of developers around you who would be willing to help out with this, especially since Google Lighthouse makes it pretty point and shoot. Here's, for example, our site, compasswave.com. Again, I'll get into CompassWave in a little bit, but we just do some estimation, lead generation for the modern cleaning service. And that's kind of what we were targeting with Google. We wanted to make sure that for the phrase, made cleaning service estimating software, we were first. And we are. Far and away first in Google. In fact, Google thinks we're so important that it gives the second spot to our entry on My Cleaning Connection, another site for keeping track of cleaning service software. And you can see why from our Google Lighthouse scores. Again, performance and best practices, there's not a whole lot we can do in this case because of third parties. But accessibility is a 98. Actually, it's that's a mistake. It should be 100. But they're listing it as a 98. And SEO is 100. So for the keywords we set up, Google respects our website, puts us first, and that brings us a lot of traffic. Now the second step, once you have your website getting traffic up at the top, you need to convert that traffic into something. You have to do something with it. You have to make your website pay. Those websites aren't just for information. You're not just trying to spread the message about your business. You're trying to get more customers. And at the moment, those visitors to your website are not customers. This is something that CompassWave can help with, actually. Think about this statistic. I thought this was mind-blowing. On average, the average cleaning service has 55% of their clientele churn every year. So if you're the average cleaning service, then by this time next year, you will have half of your client base replaced. Just think about that for a second. Imagine if you could keep those customers. Imagine if you could refill them quicker. This has become the dilemma of the modern cleaning service. You have to capture leads efficiently to keep up with that churn. If you can capture them so efficiently that you can actually make up the gap and more, then your business is going to grow. And efficiency is key here, especially in volatile times like these. So the most efficient way to do it is to use an automated tool. In essence, leaving it to the experts. Now, CompassWave can help out a lot with this. So let's take a look at how CompassWave can generate leads for us, give those leads instant estimates, and help us through quoting, invoicing, scheduling, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I just logged into my CompassWave account here. This is a demo account we have. And I wanted to interject here with a little demo of how CompassWave works and how it can help you take a lead all the way from the beginning where you capture it, all the way through the process and into the appointment. So I'm in my dashboard here in CompassWave. And you actually see on the right, under Estimate Newsfeed, you can see a list of all the people that have gotten estimates recently. On the bottom, you can see your statistics. And here at the calendar section, you can see some of the appointments that you have coming up. So CompassWave can take you all the way around this process. So from the moment you capture a lead, you're incentivizing people to give you their information for an estimate. So you're providing them an estimate. And then you go through the whole process. You can charge them, you can invoice them, you can quote them, and you can schedule their appointments all in one place. So the first thing I want to show you is under sales and prospects. You can see a complete database of all of the estimates that you've gotten recently. Now under tools, these first 4, widget appearance, drivers, questions, and widget pages, help you to customize the widget that people are going through, that like form that people are going through, to get their estimates and to give you their information. So you can edit how it looks. On the drivers page, you can edit the costs. So in other words, you can edit how we're coming to the price that you give them as an estimate. So for example, under base costs, you can set price by square footage, 10 cents a square foot, and that'll provide your base cost that we can add on to. You can take into your account your overhead, the number of jobs that you do per year, how much profit margin you want, your taxes, all of that. And because it would be kind of crazy to only ask the questions that we provide you, we also give you the ability to create your own questions, ones that are specific to your business, ones that maybe your neighboring cleaning service might not ask. Under widget pages, you get to reorganize these little gray boxes. They're what we call modules. So they're little bits of functionality that do something. Like on page 1, I have only collect address. And it does what it says. It collects the address from the customer. And so page 1 of the widget, if I scroll down, there's an example down here. On the first page, all you see is asking for the address. And then as you go on, you'll see the functionality associated with all these little modules. But there's more to it. If I go to integrations, we can actually integrate with other tools as well. So for example, we can integrate with Zapier to trigger text messages or whatever you'd like. Stripe is a big one. Stripe is the company that can help you take payments through CompassWave. So you can actually invoice the customer and then click charge on the invoice, and it'll just automatically charge their credit card. So you can run through the whole process in this one place. Perhaps you're in person or over the phone, and it would be kind of weird to send them an email with an estimate, or maybe you just don't want to do the math in your head, which is understandable. We have this quote tool that lets you go through the whole process without sending an outgoing email or a redirect or anything that might be strange in this sort of setting. And then lastly, in your calendar, you can actually set up appointments on specific days. So you can say every Tuesday at noon, I'm going to be at this person's house because they wanted to set up an appointment. And you can actually schedule that in the calendar and have it set to charge them every Tuesday. Well, that wraps up our look at CompassWave, but if you're interested in getting started, you can sign up now at compasswave.com/signup and type in this code. It's MADESUMMIT2021 with no capitals or spaces. You'll get 25% off forever. But let's get back to the presentation. Step 3 is communication. This is one we often overlook. But what's the point of connecting with your customers if you don't stay in contact with them regularly? Remember, going back to that statistic, 55% of your clientele churn every year on average. So not only do you have to refill your client base, but you have to keep your customers in the first place. Think of it this way. My family makes wine, and they put it in one of those old oak barrels, and they're kind of creaky and they don't work so well. And so sometimes at the seams between the slats, the wine will leak out. And if the volume gets too low, the wine will spoil. And so what we do is we top it off with more wine and fill it back up again and make sure that it never gets too low. But that seems very inefficient, doesn't it? Wouldn't the proper solution just be to make sure it doesn't leak in the first place? Right? When you think about it, that seems like a better solution. And that's really what I'm getting at here is if your clientele is like the wine in that barrel. They're coming out the seams. 55% of it is going away every year on average. So you can refill and refill and refill all you want. And that's great that we're getting so efficient at that. However, you need to make sure that that clientele is not leaking in the first place. You want to make sure that you're communicating with them so that they don't leave and churn in the first place. So in the professional business world, in risk management, there's something called a bow tie analysis. It looks a little bit like this. Basically, I know this looks like a fancy graph, but basically, there's not much to this. On the left is the causes, like bad performance, bad customer service, no outreach, estimate delays. See, these are bad things that we could do to bring about the risk in the middle, that is customer dissatisfaction. So we're talking about customer dissatisfaction. That's the center of this graph. And then on the right is the things that could happen if dissatisfaction is just left to fester, right? You could lose revenue. You could end up helping your competitors, which could help them, hurt your business further. And then you could also have a permanent reputational impact. You don't want to be known as that company that never got back to me, or that company that, didn't do a good job on my house. However, in the middle there, you have preventative measures and impact minimizers. And these are the solutions. We don't want to talk all about problems and problems and problems. We want to talk about solutions. So under preventative measures, there are some things that you can do to eliminate those causes before they turn into customer dissatisfaction. For example, bad performance. Perhaps your workers are not cleaning the houses well, right? The solution is to train them. Then you're preventing the customer dissatisfaction from happening in the first place. Or, for example, at the bottom, estimate delays. We talked about CompassWave, right? There are no delays in getting estimates with CompassWave because they ask for one and they get an automatic instant estimate, right? So you're preventing the dissatisfaction from happening in the first place. However, The rest of these are specifically about communication. Look, I'll blank out the ones that we're not talking about right now. Look at bad customer service, for example. That's a difficult one to deal with, but there is something that you can do to prevent the dissatisfaction from occurring in the first place, and that's quality control. With quality control, internal communication is key. You need someone in charge of that. And this is often neglected as part of our online presence because it's not facing the world. It's facing inwards. We're looking at how we communicate with our coworkers, with our employees, with our bosses even. For example, a lot of people will do this with notes in Compass Wave. And in each of the leads, you can type a little thing that says, we did this or we did that. You can schedule appointments in there and whatnot. But often that means finding a way to communicate with your colleagues efficiently. And that might mean texting, that might mean emailing. That person who's in charge of quality control has to make sure that all of that is being handled efficiently. That person also should be in charge of checking the quality of the work of the customer. And not necessarily just like, is this counter clean kind of checking quality, but I'm talking about like asking the customer how they felt, asking about specific problems, right? Perhaps you couldn't get to a certain place in the house to clean it. It has to be somebody's job to reach out to a customer and explain that. Or perhaps a section was dirtier than you expected it to be. It has to be somebody's job to go to the customer and say, hey, this part was dirtier than we thought it would be. We needed to charge you extra. They have to be honest about setbacks like that to build trust in the company. Going back to our bow tie analysis, another cause is no outreach. Now, this isn't about specific problems. That's where quality control comes in, but checkups are the solution to no outreach. And checkups aren't in relation to a specific problem. They're just reaching out to the customers. Go back to this slide. We need to go where the people are. And that often will mean texting, then social media, then emailing. No, we all like emailing. We all like phone calls. But those aren't the most efficient ways of reaching people anymore. Often it's texting or a social media like Twitter. People get messages on there a lot, and they often prefer it. Just a little tip, professionalism is great and all, and it works very well, especially in other industries. But in the cleaning world, you're not an educational source. We need to prioritize friendly, trust-building communication over impersonal, aloof professionalism. So that means if the customer's on Twitter, send a nice message to them on Twitter. If that's what they want, don't shove it aside just because you feel it's unprofessional. With online checkups, you get the ability to reach out beforehand, which means you can upsell. You can say, hey, we're going to be washing that wall right there. The windows are right next to it. If you want, we can do the windows and I'll take a couple dollars off for you. That might be a great opportunity to upsell, and it was completely unprompted, but a lot of companies are actually making more money that way. You can also reach out afterwards, especially afterwards, because you want to show that you care. You want to show that you can resolve complaints before they even turn into complaints. But if we go back to our bow tie analysis, there's one column there called impact minimizers. Now, sometimes things will happen and people will be dissatisfied. But that's where customer retention comes in. We want to make sure that we are getting to the customers before the effects start to take place, before they take away their money from us, before they go to a competitor, before they leave a bad review. Sometimes these things will happen, but we need to reach out through the same avenues. Perhaps it's texting, then social media, then emailing. Those are often the most common avenues of communication. We want to reach out to the customers and show that we want to resolve their problems before they become big problems. This can all be done over the internet. The last step, keep it up. Now, this one's kind of cliche, but it's not a process. It's not a list of steps that we can just do and then be done with it. This is a cycle. That's why I said at the beginning, this is something that you can keep doing. It's a path to improve further because SEO doesn't stand still. You have to continually upgrade your website to stay modern and stay in Google's good graces. Think of sites that you maybe used 10 years ago that no longer even show up in Google. They're still on the internet, but because they were never updated, Google doesn't like them anymore. You have to stay up to date with that. Or with the second thing we talked about, CompassWave, it's bringing you leads, but you have to act on those leads. Sure, they're getting instant estimates, but you have to reach out to them to make sure that you're good for their appointment. You actually have to be friendly and personable with the customers. Your communication skills, those can always be improved and made better, and we can never say we're done in that department. So here it is, all summarized. Step 1, get a website. Show who you are, cast a wide net, perform well for Google. That's the Google Lighthouse, all 100s. This is like a web developer's dream here with the little sparkles to show it's a celebration. Step 2, you want to make your website pay. We want to generate leads with our website. We want to estimate instantly. That's what CompassWave is for. We want to invoice and book. Actually, CompassWave is for all of these things. Your website isn't just for giving people information. It's for making money from those people as well. Step 3 was to communicate with your customers and internally. You need to quality control internally. Make sure that internally you're doing all of the things that you're supposed to be doing. All your coworkers and employees and bosses are all talking to each other. You need to make sure that there are consistent checkups, unprompted, and also for specific reasons. You need to make sure that you're going through customer retention, making sure that once people are dissatisfied, that it doesn't result in the bad effects that we were talking about. And step 4, keep it going. The website continually needs to be improved, or else it'll start to slip in Google. You need to continually check CompassWave if you're using it, because or else you'll start to miss those leads that you work so hard to get in the first place. And you also need to prevent dissatisfaction from happening in the first place. And that's not a simple task. It isn't. But we all work at our communication skills, and eventually you'll see those churn numbers coming down a lot. And not only will less customers be leaving, but you'll be adding more customers on top, and so your business is going to grow exponentially. So now your company is on the web and leveraging it for growth. And as long as you keep moving with these steps, your business will become the leader in your area. And I hope I proved that that's not too difficult of an ask. But I was Jaden Baptista. This was Watch Your Profits Balloon with an Online Presence from CompassWave. If you have any questions, you can go to compasswave.com. There's a little chat bubble in the corner you can talk to us with. I'm at Jaden Guitarman on Twitter. If you want to send me a message through DM or tag me, I'll make sure to get to all the questions. Thank you.